Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Moroz, your MLA here in River Heights, and the Minister of Innovation and New Technology. Before we begin, I'd like to honor the sacredness and importance of this land and of our ancestors that once walked where we are standing today. The Anishinaabe, the Inanewak, the Dene, the Dakota, the Inuit, and the Anishinaabe nations, and the Red River Métis Nation, who paved the way to what is known as Manitoba, home to all treaty people. The reason we share this information with you is that it's a reminder of our treaty histories and the original homelands of all of those nations, which have become home to all of us here today. I'd like to welcome our guests and community leaders who have joined us. Today, we're here to announce important steps our government is taking to address and prevent hate crimes and to support communities impacted by hate and violence. To start us off, it's my pleasure to welcome the Premier of Manitoba, the Honourable Wab Kinew.
Thanks, Mike. Well, it's nice to be here with my MLA and my MP. That's awesome. I wanted to begin by acknowledging the great neighborly virtues that we saw this past weekend across the province. People and communities stepped up to help travelers who were stranded because of the weather, and a lot of people just helped shoveling the walk for their neighbors as well too. So we know what it takes to get through a Manitoba winter, but I wanted to begin by saying thanks to Manitobans everywhere in this great province who did the right thing. And of course, hopefully everybody's doing well and the kids are enjoying, in some cases, a day off from school. Today we're here to announce something very, very important. We've created a $1 million security enhancement fund for religious and cultural institutions which are facing the very ugly threat of hate crimes. And so very much like the security rebate programs that we've had for your homes and for your businesses, we're now making a pot of money available to community organizations, to religious organizations such as this one, right across the province of Manitoba. We're also going a bit further this time by, under the wonderful expertise of Dave Delal, retired from the Winnipeg Police Service, we're also making expertise available too, to help synagogues, to help mosques, to help other organizations to be able to troubleshoot and to get good advice on what sort of security measures and security techniques that they need to be able to respond to this terrible scourge that unfortunately we've been seeing here in Manitoba recently. Now I want to make very clear as the Premier of this province that when somebody commits a hate crime, they're committing a crime against all of us as Manitobans. There is no place for hatred in our society. And it's often said that anti-Semitism is the oldest form of hatred. It was pretty nasty when we saw some very ugly, ugly symbols depicting that form of hatred just a number of weeks ago. And so this is an idea that we were working on, inspired by the federal program, of course, for some time, but I think the renewed impetus came because of what we were seeing in the community through the holiday season. And so I want to say a message to the Jewish community here in Manitoba. We've got your back. And I've heard loud and clear that it's not just about the words, it's also about the action. And so here we are today, announcing another step in the series of actions that we're taking to fight anti-Semitism in Manitoba and to support Manitoba's Jewish community. At the same time, I also want to speak to Manitoba's Muslim community. We have recently seen some very ugly forms of hatred expressed towards you and some very nasty forms of vandalism targeting your religious institutions. And so I also want to say we've got your back and we are very much committed to action. And hopefully, in the very near future in Manitoba, we get to a place where we're talking to wonderful communities in our province, not about the challenges and the barriers that they have to overcome, but also about the wonderful contributions that they make to our society. The reality is, however, in this current moment, we have to respond to the need to keep people safe. And so we will be there as a provincial government to ensure safety and to ensure support so that we can keep building this province together, where everybody belongs, one Manitoba. Miigwech merci. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier, for your continued support in ensuring all Manitobans feel safe in their communities. I'm now pleased to introduce my colleague, the Minister of Justice, Matt Wiebe.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Mike. Very pleased to be here today. What we're talking about today is something that is absolutely fundamental to our way of life in Manitoba. That is making sure that all Manitobans can feel safe where they gather, where they worship, and where they support one another. When you walk into your place of worship or your community center, you shouldn't have to worry about intimidation. You shouldn't have to worry about hate. We're seeing more and more acts of hate, of vandalism, and other acts across this country and here in our wonderful province as well. Manitoba has always been a place where people from all over the world can come to build that better life, and our government will ensure that our province remains a place where people feel safe and they feel welcome. This is why, as you heard, we are launching a $1 million security enhancement fund to help communities in building that strength within themselves. Things like better lighting, more cameras, alarms, controlled entry, and training are all covered under this fund. It also supports community-developed security plans because we know that every neighborhood and every organization knows their own needs the best. So, cultural groups, places of worship, community service agencies, and anyone else who has been targeted by hate-motivated acts can apply to this important fund. When you attend your local synagogue, your mosque, your church, or your temple, you can feel safe and you can feel secure. This allows community groups that they can stay focused on helping people rather than worrying about threats to their community. Stronger security also means that communities are stronger, and stronger communities make for a stronger Manitoba. To support this fund, our security team will guide the process and ensure that applications receive immediate response. It will be chaired, as you heard, by Dave Dalal, who brings that real-world experience from his time with the Winnipeg Police Service. The council will also include community voices and members of both the RCMP and the Winnipeg Police Service, as well as resources from the province, including the Manitoba Criminal Intelligence Centre and Manitoba Justice. These experts have already been engaged with different religious communities and institutions to ensure that the work happens quickly and that these groups feel supported at each step of the way. Their job is simple. Make sure the money goes where it's going to have the biggest impact, where it will make the biggest difference in keeping people safe. Manitobans have always stood for each other. Whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, or any other form of hate, there's just no room for it here in this province. The goal is to make this process fair, accessible, and responsive to the real needs that communities are feeling today. Manitoba is out at its best when we look out for one another. This investment is about keeping people safe, but it's also about protecting who we are, our true identity as a province. Everyone deserves to feel safe, and together we'll make sure that they do.
Thank you, Minister Wiebe. We know that addressing hate and protecting communities requires partnership, trust, and listening to those with lived experience. We're committed to standing with communities, confronting hate wherever it appears, and making Manitoba safer for everyone. This concludes the formal portion of today's announcement. We'll now open the floor for immediate questions.
Mr. Premier, Minister Wiebe kind of touched on this, I believe. I just wanted to kind of confirm. So obviously the incident at the Wiebe Cafe, right across the street at Kelvin High, is this fund, it's not exclusive just for religious institutions. Anyone who can experience this hate crime is allowed to apply for this. Is that correct? Would you like to take that, Mr. Wiebe?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, as the Premier mentioned, this really complements a number of other initiatives that our government is already taking to help with safety and security in community. You mentioned a business, for instance. We just launched in December a separate fund specifically for security and enhancing security infrastructure with businesses. Within our schools, we're developing stronger safety plans with school divisions. So there's a lot of work that's already happening. What we're offering here is a specific fund for faith-based communities, but we're also offering the services and the expertise of Dave and his team. Mr. Dalal is somebody who has a wealth of experience, as I said, with the WPS. But his communities out in, his connections out in community, I think, are also an incredible benefit. And so he's available to help guide the process. If somebody has a concern around security, he's able to plug them into the resources that are already available. Could be the federal initiative. It could be this particular fund. It could be other funds that might make sense. But again, that guidance that he's able to offer, I think, is the real benefit that communities are going to start to see in terms of keeping people safe and offering that next level of security.
I just have one follow-up. I just wanted to also kind of go a little deeper into what exactly is going to be available. You did mention security guards. I'm just curious about that, if that would be available as part of this fund. And can you maybe just elaborate more into like the cameras and lighting, what kind of, an organization might be able to expect the access to this money, how they can improve security?
Yeah, when it comes to infrastructure, we've talked a little bit about controlled entry, security cameras, other, physical pieces of security that can help a community feel safe. We're in a place where they've done a lot of that work, and now with the work that they're doing, and again, with the support of Dave, I know that they're going to look at where we can go next. So there's certainly that element that I think is important. But why this fund is important as well is that it's flexible, that it's nimble, that if there is an immediate threat or a specific threat to a community, that we can deploy the resources in a way that might not fit into that specific infrastructure ask. There might be something like a security guard that might be appropriate to deal with a specific threat. That's where, again, the discretion that Dave and his team are going to be able to bring to this, I think, are going to be key to supporting communities in a real, immediate way.
Is there a limit here, or is it a case-by-case basis in terms of funding?
It's a case-by-case basis. Again, what we're really focused on is addressing immediate concerns and immediate threats. We've seen a period of time where Manitobans have been scared. These acts have been going on, and they feel threatened and they feel concerned. And so the idea of this fund is to ensure that they have the ability to address those issues immediately, and that's going to look different for different communities. So we are allowing some ability to adjust and apply for, again, at the direction and advice of our security experts, the enhancements that are going to have the biggest impact in community.
Minister Wiebe, are you able to sort of just elaborate, like, for folks who don't know, what sort of is Mr. Dalal's team, what's his role, kind of?
Well, I could go on all morning about, or all afternoon about how great Dave is. Folks know his background with the WPS. We brought him into the department as somebody who has that obviously wealth of experience, but also has a knowledge about what the lay of the land, so to speak, when it comes to security and threats are. So he's certainly current with what's happening in community. And then I will just also say that he's somebody that has that ability to liaise with communities in a meaningful way. Just in the conversations we were having before we started the formal process here, almost everybody in the room that I spoke to says, I know Dave, or I know of him, or I've already had a conversation with him. And so I think that's a key piece that Dave brings to the table. We are going to support his work in the department. We have a whole team of folks in our public safety division that are able to support his work. And then, as I said, I'm very thankful that our Member of Parliament is here. Mr. Carr is somebody that understands there's a need in this community, and so there's also federal resources in terms of an infrastructure fund that we're going to lean into as well. So we're going to make sure that those resources are brought to bear in a number of different ways, again, at the guidance of Dave.
So will folks or institutions that are applying under this grant, will they be given money to use Mr. DeLawley's team services? Is that part of the grant, or is that on the side?
So we've got an email set up that I think we were going to get shared out to the community as soon as possible. And the idea is that he's able to then respond and set up those personal connections. If that's a phone call, if that's a meeting in person, whether that's information that he needs to share by email. But no, he's available to community, and he's going to respond quickly. Our team is going to respond quickly because we know these threats are here, they're real, and we want to give assurances to the community about what those threats specifically are, and then what the best ways to mitigate them are.
How quickly do you want this to be? Like you said, immediate, but how quickly and that, what does that look like? The light set up.
Yeah, we're ready to go right now. Dave's checking his phone right after we break here, I think.
Is this a one-time fund, or is it going to be like new money every year, like $1 million specifically? Will you review the fund, or is that?
Well, we're starting here right now, and we're getting this money out the door and deploying it in a way that's smart and that's effective. That's the first step. As you've seen with other programs, we've seen a good uptake from the community, from businesses in their case. Here I'm sure a lot of faith communities are going to see this as a real resource. So we're going to look at how this rolls out, and again how we can couple this with other initiatives and other funds that are available, and we want to support community.
Just one last question. Premier Kinew, just for my colleagues at Radio Canada, can you give an overview in French if possible, and just talk about the importance of this program en français?
Yeah. Alors, nous sommes très fiers d'être ici aujourd'hui pour annoncer ces appuis pour les communautés juives ici dans le Manitoba. En même temps, cette initiative est là pour toutes les communautés religieuses et culturelles dans le Manitoba. C'est vraiment grave que nous sommes dans une situation où nous avons besoin de partager cette sorte d'appui, mais nous serons toujours là en tant que votre gouvernement provincial pour lutter contre ces crimes et pour appuyer les communautés religieuses. So I think Matt did a great job summing up the program, and I think it's just important for us to keep the context in place here. This is a great beacon in the community, like this literal synagogue that we're in, Shari Zedek. I think the first time I came here was more than a dozen years ago, probably, with Lloyd Axworthy, who was the president of the University of Winnipeg at the time, when we participated in the reading as part of Yom HaShoah. And over the years, I've been really happy to come here many, many times for many, many different events. And that's why I was really sad when, living in this neighborhood, you saw it targeted with a really, really ugly symbol. And I'm not going to say what it is. We all know what it was. But it just speaks to the need to be vigilant, and it speaks to the need to show support. All of us want to live in a society where everybody reaches their full potential and can share what we have to offer here. And yet the Jewish community, time and time again, continues to come up against really, really ugly, nasty incidents like this one. Other communities too, the Muslim community, we've seen very high profile incidents targeting them as well. And so our government, just to be clear, is taking a series of actions, of which this is one step. There's a question about Calvin. We've made Holocaust education mandatory for educators, as well as for students in Manitoba, with an eye towards ensuring that if something like that happens, it should never happen, but if it does happen, that there will be an appropriate response with the sensitivity in mind. By the way, speaking of this being a beacon in the community, some of that education for educators in Manitoba was delivered right here at Shari Zedek. it is not possible to understand what is happening around the world today in Greenland, Venezuela, NATO, EU, whatever, without understanding what happened in the wake of World War II, the Holocaust, and the global human rights consensus that was forged at Nuremberg. That's why young Manitobans need to learn that. And I think if all of us just renew that effort to ensure that lessons like that are learned, we will see fewer hate crimes in the future. And so that's part of the response. Somebody in this instance, allegedly, somebody was arrested and then rearrested, somebody who's been alleged to have committed these crimes. Well, we have the dedicated hate crimes prosecutor. We have specific training for Crown attorneys so that they can better understand not just the nature of hate crimes, but also the toll that it takes on the community. So ensuring that there are security guards, shatterproof glass, fences, cameras, all the other more complicated things that a layperson like me is not going to understand, but Dave and other professionals will, that's part of the response. But we also need to have a broader provincial-wide, society-wide focus on this thing. 2026, we're able to create, these supercomputers that can mimic human speech in almost every way, and yet we still can't get rid of hate speech in our society. It puts things into perspective, doesn't it? So long as there is a need in the community, we will be there. Security cameras and guards and things like that, we don't want to do it, we got to do it, but we'll be there with that. But hopefully some of the other steps that we're taking with kids, with the future generations, will get the more permanent solution, the more lasting effect that we want to see in the society, which is to have hate crime stop and to see hate speech eradicated and to see everybody able to reach their full potential.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, I just have a question about the trade meeting that we had this morning. Your government signed an MOU with three organizations. Can you just tell us how that...
The what?
Your government just signed an MOU with three other organizations as part of the trade meeting this morning. Can you just tell us about the...
This is the Arctic Gateway and...
Can you just tell us about the MOU and how that's going to implement?
Okay, well, what's everyone talking about around the world right now? It's a color, and it's something that we're all standing on right now. Greenland. What is our only hope if this Greenland stuff continues? Churchill. So we're leaning into Churchill hard because, I've had the great privilege of speaking to people in the armed forces over the years, and one saying that has stuck with me is that they say amateurs think about strategies, professionals think about logistics. So Canada has a lot of great plans for the future, but there is only one port and one rail line that feeds the Arctic, and that would be absolutely essential for us to maintain sovereignty in Canada's Arctic, and that is at Churchill, and that is in Manitoba. So if you're thinking whatever about Trump, if you're thinking whatever about Greenland, think Churchill. That is Canada's answer to what is going on right now. And by the way, it's Canada's answer for how do we grow our economy, how do we become less dependent on the US, how do we ensure that Western Canadian resources can reach the EU, can reach Asia even more quickly if you use the Suez Canal. So we have this amazing gem in the northern part of our province, an MOU today, another step maybe towards advancing that goal. We're going to be working very closely with our cousins at the federal level to move that project forward. And I just want to encourage Manitobans and Canadians to just take stock of how it seems that each passing day, the opportunity that Churchill presents becomes more and more important.
Mr. Premier, just one topic change. Some new developments came out of Michigan today. But I'm just curious, you've spoken about this, but what's the latest you're hearing from people on the ground in Michigan and from the federal government about how things are going, with the recovery efforts?
There's a lot of work that's being done. A lot of contractors, tradespeople, CAF members are on the ground in the community doing great work. So I just want to thank the Michigamak Cree Nation and the incorporated community of Cross Lake, our federal partners, everybody's working together. We just want to see people go home, and hopefully they'll be able to do that soon.
Premier, can you speak specifically to the hydro agreement findings that they found apparently shotgun pellet and that sort of thing were shot at, specifically in that power line or at least around that power line, the aerial, I think the aerial balloon, something like that, that were
No, I don't.
Any reason why?
Don't have anything to say.
Not even like not shoot at the power line?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I can say that in French too if you want. Okay, thanks everyone.